speak about one of our members who sadly won't be with us ever again, Councillor Judy Smith, who sadly passed away last week. She was a very, very committed member of this committee, as she was a very, very committed councillor for many years. And before that, she had been a shopkeeper, actually, in Bourne, where she and her husband ran Smiths of Bourne for many years and served the Bourne public there. She then became a district councillor, and she worked tirelessly for the council and for her residents locally. She was working right up until she died, because Councillor Smith, unfortunately, wasn't a councillor who could stop working. She was so well known locally and so well respected that people were ringing her all the time. And the depth of sadness in Bourne is really incalculable. I'm sure the councillors here today from Bourne will agree with me on that. And it is a great, great loss. So I would just like for us to have a minute's silence to support the memory of Councillor Steve Smith, and to know that while she's not in the room with us today, she is with us in spirit and will be. So if we could all stand for a minute, please. Sorry, yes, we can start the meeting now. We aren't expecting any fire drills this afternoon. So if the fire alarm does go off, we're all to meet in the green at the front of the building here. If you could let me know of any replacements, please. So.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's an Alliance SK vacancy on this committee, which will today be filled by Councillor Virginia Moran. Thank you. I will now do roll call. Councillor Judy Stevens.
Present.
Councillor Penny Robbins.
Present.
Councillor Paul Fellows.
Present.
Councillor Virginia Moran. Councillor Jill Thomas. Councillor Amanda Wheeler.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. As you all know, if there are any interests to be declared, please do so now, or if that should arise during the course of the meeting, if you could let us know if you do have any interests that come to mind. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Robbins, if you could let us know of public speakers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On agenda item 7, update on markets, we have Councillor Cleaver speaking on that item. And on item 10, refresh of the cultural strategy, we have Councillors Cleaver, Henry Sawnston, he's actually attending on Zoom for this meeting, and we have Stephen Burnett as a third speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking at the minutes of the last meeting held on the 14th of June, if we've all had a chance to have a look at those, does anybody wish to bring anything up, or would you like to propose them as a true record? Councillor Wheeler.
So, sorry, just a query. The public speakers, do they not speak now, or do they have to wait until the item?
I think it's more relevant that they speak before the item, because otherwise we might forget what they've said. Okay, so can you?
Madam Chair, I propose.
Thank you. Is that seconded by anyone? The minutes? Councillor Fellows, thank you. Can we have a vote, please, then, on the minutes? Do we have any abstentions? Yeah. Okay. Are there any updates from previous meeting that anybody wants to bring forward that aren't covered in the agenda this afternoon? It's a pretty comprehensive agenda, so I don't think so. So if we move on then to the agenda proper. So the update on the markets, I think, is the next thing. So we're Andrew Cotton here. Sorry, Councillor. Sorry, Nicola McCoy-Brown.
Sorry, I was just wondering whether we were doing the public speaking now. That would be useful to have the public speaking first.
Oh, Councillor Cleaver, before the report. Yes,
Well,
thank you very much. We're doing the public speaking relating to each item. So Councillor Cleaver has indicated that he'd like to speak on markets and also on the cultural strategy. So if he could speak on markets now and then on the cultural strategy when it comes up. Thank you. Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, taking me slightly by surprise there. Happy to talk on the submission that I've made to the committee as a councillor who isn't a member of the committee. I'm happy to speak to what I've said. I think it's quite self-explanatory what I put in. I hope it has been circulated to everybody.
We've had it, but we would like, we thought you were going to speak.
Thank you. That's fine. That's fine. Sorry, bear with me. I'm trying to find my copy. There we go. Right. Thank you for this. I am, I think as most Stanford councillors, very concerned and very aware that our market in Stanford is a key part of our town thriving. It is a key part of our community, and I think we should see it as an opportunity for the tourism and visitor economy of the town. And basically on that, with those thoughts in mind, I thought I would simply offer some ideas when the committee considers this particular item on the agenda. So I think really what I've said speaks for itself, and I have said in other forums, and it hasn't yet come to the fore, this issue about climate change and the issue about bringing together the issue of EV charging points as part of making our town centres green and carbon free. It seems to me an obvious thing that we need EV charging points, and it seems also obvious they can be used to provide power to both our visiting street fairs and our markets, to eliminate the use of diesel generators, basically make the whole environment a little bit more friendly, and hopefully help to attract more stalls that can offer a wider range of services because they've got mains power. So I think that's something that I would push very hard to be considered. Again, already mentioned in another forum, the use of the Hello SK mobile app. I have to say I was very disappointed by what I saw on it during Burley weekend, which has just passed us. Having a look on that and seeing what was on offer and what was actually open in town when all those tourists were there for Burley was very disappointing from our local businesses. So I think that's something that we do need to push a little further. And again, this whole question that seems to keep coming up for us in Stanford is the fact that we have to plan for a large increase in our population. That's in the local plan. We know it's there. We know it's coming between now and 2036. Lots of more houses, lots more people. So we need to build that in to whatever strategic plans that we're for all the areas of the council responsible for. And so we need to actually be ambitious to meet the requirements of a growing population. So that includes, let's look at additional sites, let's look at the number of days the markets operate. Let's try and attract greater footfall by the layout, because I don't think that's been reviewed for a very long time. There are some aspects of the layout of a market that sometimes don't make it look as attractive as it could be, and don't attract the footfall. And then again, the question of promoting them so that, again, it's tied in with the tourist and visitor offer. So thank you for allowing me to make this submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleaver. Thank you. Andrew Cotton, would you like to put your report to the committee? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor.
Madam Chairman, I'll just do a few words to introduce, if that's all right. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And really, all I've got to say is that I'm pleased to bring this to committee on an update on the current operation of the council-run markets of Bourne, Grantham and Stanford. As you know, they have all played a significant role during the pandemic, and I see them playing their part in the regeneration of our high streets and town centres. And so now I will pass on to the Director of Housing and Property, Andrew Cotton. Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good afternoon to committee. So just in terms of the report that we've submitted for committee's consideration this afternoon, I guess we could see it in fundamentally in two parts. The first is providing an update and information on the 3 markets operated by the council, and that also includes an appendix which gives some financial information in terms of the last 3 years and the sort of the current year's budget. The report covers that market information in section 2 on the page 23 of the pack, and it gives a breakdown of Stanford, Grantham and Bourne markets and some basic facts and figures. The report then, in terms of key considerations, places it in the context of the sort of economic environment of South Kesteven, and really we're looking for committees' inputs and suggestions, with the recommendation being that bid is made in terms of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Part when that committee is constituted for a utilisation from that fund to undertake a study. And the relevant part of the fund is covered in section 3.2, so that's supporting local business investment, the theme included in the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So there are some suggestions, very basic suggestions at section 3.3 in terms of suggestions to carry forward into any study, and really that's looking for external expertise and understanding and benchmarking against other market towns and the successes or pitfalls that we can either follow or avoid. I hope that's a helpful summary, Madam Chairman. And just to remind committee, there's the 2 recommendations. The first is that submission to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund Committee, and the second is that comment and suggestion. And of course, committee can reject or amend those recommendations as it wishes. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed for the report. Just one thing that just crossed my mind because of something that Councillor Cleaver brought up. Did we, and talking about the Twitter and the Facebook accounts, have we also got a good showing on the Hello app for the markets as well? Is that on there? Was that on there? Are we using that? Sorry, John.
We've not had a response from the markets team on that as yet to get them on the Hello SK app.
Perhaps something that we can look at going forward. Thank you. Thanks. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to see the consideration of carbon reduction for the markets, and I was just wondering whether this can be considered in conjunction with the street fairs, because obviously when they come into town, there's quite a lot of diesel equipment, and if we can find a way of making both our markets and our fairs carbon neutral, that would go some way to our declaration of a climate emergency. A second point I wanted to make was about how well the Stanford market is doing. But I've been contacted by a number of charities who want to have charity stalls on the market, and it's met with problems due to limited space. And I'm just wondering, bearing in mind how well the market does, whether we couldn't find a bit of more space to allow charity stalls on a Friday. And a final point is there have been ongoing issues relating to dangerous pathways, and also one particular dangerous building, which at the moment there's a cordon around it, which affects the ability of people to walk around the town on a market day. It's one that I've raised a number of times, and I know it's not SKDC's building, but I just wonder if what more we can do to work with the owners of that building to make sure it's repaired, because there's an accident waiting to happen if someone has a falling roof slate land on them in the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is that something, Nicola, you can respond to?
Yeah, thank you for those questions. I was just wondering whether East Midlands Building Consultancy might be useful to look at some of the buildings. So I'll absolutely take it away and update the Councillor Wheeler separately.
Thanks very much indeed. And then Councillor Moran, thank you.
Just a quick question, page 23 of the report. It says the Bourne market has a maximum of 20 stalls and trades every Thursday. The market on Saturday doesn't seem to have been mentioned at all. Is that an oversight, or is there a reason for that?
Andrew Cotton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, in terms of Councillor Fellowes' question, that is an oversight. I do have more detailed information in terms of the stalls and occupancy on all the markets on the different days, and happy to share that with committee if that would be helpful. Maybe also an opportunity, Madam Chairman, just in terms of Councillor Wheeler's questions just a moment ago. Certainly with the climate emergency declaration, we do have a climate officer who looks at energy and does connect the dots in terms of different threads around carbon reduction. So I think that would naturally put that issue, or pick that issue up as you suggest. And in terms of charity stalls, happy to take that away and to have a look at that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And perhaps also clarity, do the street fairs, would they come under the heading of markets? How do we manage those? Are they managed through the market team, or are they managed separately?
Those are managed really separately but collaboratively between colleagues in Nicola's team and the markets team. So there's a joined up approach to that.
Because there has been there was a lot said about the carbon emissions and so on relating to the street fairs, I think. So that is something that probably we do need to have a look at in terms of possibly more so than the markets themselves, actually. So yeah, thank you. Councillor Moran.
Thank you. Gosh, I've got such a lot of questions. I'll tackle the worst one first. What on earth are we doing losing £84,000 a year providing a market in Grantham? I mean, is that acceptable? 84,000? I mean, it's basically being subsidised by all the other towns. Bourne's wiping its face, which is fine. There's obviously going to be some cost to putting on markets. Stanford's making a profit, which is great. I know from my own personal experience that Stanford market is very difficult to get on because it's always fully booked, always. And the waiting list is constantly a waiting list. So as regards venues, maybe there's a case for looking at maybe extending the market a bit. I appreciate that, I've forgotten the name of the long road along the back, where the Broad Street and Ironmonger Street are full, and there is some overspill into the pedestrianised area. Maybe they could stretch that a bit more. I don't know. As regards to layout of the markets, there's been discussions at various times on social media about the Bourne Market and where it is, with people hankering after it going back to where it used to be, which is basically on Main Street. I don't honestly think it's feasible to move it from where it is. And as it's grown quite a bit in the past 12 months, it's got more stalls. I think it was down to about 3 or 4 at one point. People do know about it and people are talking about it. And when people ask about things, it's quite often, oh, there's somebody on the market, we'll do that. There's nowhere sensible to move Stanford. It's quite some years since I went to Grantham Market. So I'm not entirely sure what streets it covers now. I read somewhere, and I'm not sure where I saw it, that it actually costs £12,000 in order to put that market on those streets in Grantham to get permission. Who are we getting permission from that's charging us £12,000 to put a market up in the street? I don't know who's getting that. I don't understand that bit. Other bits on the accounts, the staff costs are obviously the biggest expense. And I know the guys are quick at putting up stalls, but it's a lot of work putting them all up, which is why I'm quite surprised that Bourne Market has such a £17,000 there for employee expenses, because Bourne Market differs from the other markets in the way the stalls, they're literally pop-up stalls which slip into the ground. And I think at one point the stall holders they were just left for them and they were putting them up themselves. So I don't understand quite why there's so much money in there. The other thing I don't understand is premises expenses. If somebody could tell me what that covers, because I don't know what it is. None of the markets have any premises. Is it central costs? Is they're running the markets or what? I don't know. I think that was about it. My biggest thing was, how much are we prepared to keep invested? Bearing in mind, there's no money. We're short on money on everything. We've just had a meeting about the festivals, budget being cut, which it has to be because the money just isn't there for anything anymore. How long do we keep on subsidising a market in Grantham to the tune of 84,000, which will probably be 100,000 the year after? Yeah, sorry to bang on, but I had a lot of questions.
Okay, so we're looking at the £84,000 at Grantham Market. We're looking at who we're paying the £12,000 to at Grantham to find out who it is that we're paying. Why the staff expenses are so much, particularly in Bourne. What the premises costs are for. Is that it? Does that summarise it? Yeah. Okay. Andrew, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Moran, for the range of questions. So, no. I mean, certainly, as is noted, in the report, the markets operate at a net loss with Grantham, with obviously the figure that you've quoted, and I think that is one of the reasons for committee's interest in markets clearly, and for the report being brought forward is for us to get external support to look at that, understand how we can grow the markets, understand the role of the markets in supporting startup businesses, for example, as a route to encouraging business growth. So I think that's a big picture, and clearly will form part of the the budget setting discussions, I'm sure, for next year and years to come, in terms of markets and the cost and benefit associated with them. The £12,000 is in relation to a covenant that's paid to Buckminster Estates. That's a long-standing covenant, to understand. It's for the right. It's for the right to hold the market. Yeah. In terms of the storage, that will relate to the cost of storing the market equipment, the storage costs, That's a premises cost is in relation to where the materials are stored. And the other question was in relation to salaries, I think. So if committee's happy, I'll come back with more detail in terms of the number of hours that relates to. That will probably make more sense if it's put in that context, because the costs obviously relate to the hours.
Yeah, that was just for Bourne. I was just querying the cost for Bourne, because I can understand where the others come from. Thank you.
Sorry, did you cover the premises?
Yes, that's the storage of the stalls and
Yeah, the story. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. So was there anything else?
All I was going to say was, as regards the storage expenses, I know when we were frantically trying to hang on to the Deepings market, because if that had lost 84,000, that had be gone. As it was, we lost a lot less, but I was asked to try and reduce the cost of the Deeping market about storage, and it took me about half an hour to find free storage for all the pipes and stuff that make up, and boards that make up the stalls themselves. So I cured that almost straight away, purely by just asking a favour of a company, which is, they said absolutely no problem. I mean, do we have special, I don't know whether the storage containers or the buildings somewhere where all this is stored? I mean, can we do something to alleviate those costs? I mean, I don't know where Bourne Market's stuff's stored. But I'm thinking about 4 or 5 companies who would possibly donate the space just in Bourne. I'm just not sure how much work's been done on trying to cut down these costs to as little as possible. I mean, those Bourne Market, it's just, I just think that's a phenomenal amount of money to keep throwing at a market. I can't believe that there's the payback on that. Okay.
Did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to come back to committee with a further breakdown of the costs and the premises that are utilised, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Fez. Councillor Robbins and then Councillor Fellows. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask, how long is the waiting? How is the waiting list for Stanford markets managed at present, and how quickly does that market, the list move?
Certainly, there's very high demand in Stanford, and typically there's most of the pitches are occupied. I do have a breakdown of that. So there's typically 88 pitches on a Friday occupied, with most of those being stalls. There is a waiting list. There has been a change actually since well, sort of post-COVID, and perhaps fuel costs are contributing it, where the practice of casuals sort of arriving at markets to gain a trading position has really ceased. So it is people who are regulars and who have booked the pitch. I don't have I can't give a definitive figure in terms of the waiting list time. Happy to ask the question, have a look with the team and come back to committee on that.
Thank you. And also I'd like to know if because Stanford is so thriving, it still needs obviously to be kept on top of and not ignored. Has anybody looked into moving the market down to Star Lane so that we could take then a few more stallholders? Has that ever been done?
I don't. I've got no knowledge of whether that's previously been looked at. It looks like Councillor Wheeler was waiting to come in there, but certainly that could be the scope of any questions that we ask or potential changes that we look at.
Just with the local knowledge cars go up and then round, it provides a sort of one-way system around Stanford. So that might have been a reason why not to. But Councillor Moran's suggestion of extending down the high street seems to me to be entirely doable, because we already have stalls on the high street in the farmers market, and that only takes up a small section of the high street. So I don't see why it couldn't be continued further down, particularly as we have illegally cars driving up and down on market day trying to squeeze between the stalls. If we carried the stalls all down the pedestrian area, it would eliminate the nuisance of cars driving up. So I think that would be something to look at. And particularly if it means that we can also have charity stalls, I'd be really grateful.
Thank you, thanks. Councillor Fellows.
Sorry, it's a very cheeky one to save me emailing you, but I probably will have to anyway. The storage of Bourne Market is an old container which stands on SKDC land. And if the premise is expensive is the storage, that means in the last 3 years, we've spent the best part of £8,000 on a rusty old container, which if it is ours, why are we paying it? And if it's not ours, why don't we replace it with one that is ours and save us the money?
Again, Andrew Cotton, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, there'll be more detail behind that, so happy to come back to committee following looking at that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think that's. Is there anything anybody else on the committee would like to say? No. I think Councillor Moran brings up obviously some interesting points with regard to the amount of money that we're spending on markets, even though we do have a very successful one in Stanford. Do we know? Have we really tried hard? Do we think to encourage, to incentivise stallholders to use the other markets before they, then achieve standard at Stanford Market? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think certainly that there has been efforts in the past, and we're relying on sort of anecdotal evidence here, but if someone wants a stall in a particular location, that is the location they want. So the other, the offer in the other market towns isn't something they go for. If they want to be in Grantham, they want to be in Grantham. If they want to be in Stanford, they want to be in Stanford. So that seems to have been the experience where that's been tried previously.
Are we part of there's an association, isn't there, for markets? We're part of that, are we? What's it called?
Market Traders.
Yes, I think it's a National Market Traders Association. Is that what we're part of?
I think that's an association run for the stall holders, so the actual market traders themselves. So we encourage membership of that association.
As I understand it, there's lots of incentives, awards and that sort of thing for market traders. Sorry, are we also part of another trading association? No, just that one. Okay. It did cross my mind that obviously there's a problem with having one market that is thriving and turning people away because it's thriving so much, and then others being, as Councillor Mans pointed out, sort of effectively subsidised by that one. Obviously, is the elephant in the room. It's a question, isn't it? I wonder what other areas do, perhaps faced with the same sort of scenario. Have we looked at other market towns to see how they deal with that kind of issue?
Certainly, in my experience in other sort of districts and boroughs, I think South East Stephen is pretty unusual in terms of the number of market towns that we have. So my previous employer was Melton Borough Council, which clearly has a very strong market offer, but it is just Melton. I think that is something that we do need to get sort of professional support with in terms of understanding the competition between different market towns and the dynamic between that and the ways in which we can support the market offer, particularly within Grantham and Bourne, as the committee's already touched on. So it is an interesting piece of work, I guess, to look at that. Particularly when you look at it in the context of the financial, that sort of situation, 3 market towns very close together geographically with quite different experiences.
Actually, it's 4 market towns really, isn't it? Even though we've only got 3 markets.
Absolutely, I was just referring to the council on one thing.
Councillor Robbins and then Councillor Fellows, thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to ask a question as to when you are advertising market space, where do you advertise? So with Grantham and Bourne, where do you advertise the pictures are available? I was approached by an art teacher, a function I went to, and they said that I feel, after listening to her, I feel that we need to encourage schools and further education establishments to work with market operators to enable people entering the labour market to embrace markets as a possible career. There are pop-up stalls that we could do on some of those markets, and a lot of the students would like to put forward their art. As with cooking, you know, there's a lot of home economics in colleges who actually would like a stall just to try it out. And I wonder whether we'd look down that area. Also with youth markets to support the development of entrepreneurial skills in young people through youth markets. I know that was done in Grantham, probably, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years, don't quote me on that, ago. And that was quite successful. I think that, you know, where are we marketing these markets?
Thank you for the question. Yes, so certainly our marketing, if you like, is through the council social media, rather than any sort of specific sort of segment targeted marketing. And there is information on our website, information on the markets, how they run, how to apply. You know, that's quite comprehensive. I think it's certainly you know, an interesting thread there in terms of younger people and engaging younger people as in that entrepreneurial spirit. And again, I think that would be something that'd be really good to get examples from elsewhere about how, you know, success stories from elsewhere about how that can be utilised. So that would naturally, I think, form a part of any scope that we look for. Thank you.
Councillor Fellows.
You'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I do have a huge amount of empathy, sympathy with Andrew, because I actually feel this is a brief that perhaps he doesn't need or doesn't want. I apologise for that, mate, because I know Paul Stokes did so much work on it. But the issue I really feel like I need to say is we've had conversations about markets so many times in our meetings, and I don't think they are not equal. Stanford Market will always be successful because of where it is and the clientele it serves. It will always have stall holders, and that is a jewel in our crown. But I think it would be remiss of any of us not to look at the losses on Grantham Market and say that we have to do something about that with a matter of urgency. We either have to cut the market down so that it totally becomes affordable, or perhaps we even have to be more drastic about our decisions about it. But I, as a member of this committee, can't look at those losses and go, this is sustainable, because I don't think it is, and I don't think it's right.
Councillor Robbins.
Sorry, me again. I do agree with Councillor Fellows as well. With regards to the Grantham and Bourne, we need to kind of focus more on them being a destination market, so we can the dwell time in markets, which will have then a knock-on effect to the town centres. So kind of food areas are really good. Again, I think Grantham's done this years ago, where it's people have it as a destination, so they actually shop and then eat at the same time. It brings more people in, so it's maybe a different. As the Stanford, you have to deal with these, you know, in different ways. Have you thought of anything with regards to that?
Yeah, I certainly think that, in fact, it's been the entire thread of the discussion, hasn't it, that the council run markets, the 3 very different markets, and certainly that sort of bespoke approach, I think, would be appropriate. But in terms of supporting us to develop those specific action plans in terms of, you know, what is needed in Grantham, what is needed in Bourne, what is needed in Stanford. I think that's where we've got the suggestion that we get the support of external experts to help us develop those bespoke action plans.
Thank you.
Can I, Councillor Wheeler, just like to just interject. I just want to clarify, if we wish to encourage more traders in obviously Bourne and Grantham, because we've got a lot in Stanford, are you saying that the way we do it is primarily through social media?
That's our promotion. Yes, the main thrust of our promotion is social media and obviously linked to the information that we have on our website.
So unless I was looking at the markets, particularly on Facebook, I wouldn't know that you had space in Grantham or Bourne.
If you were interested in a space on one of our markets, and if you Googled it with South Kesteven and the market, it does return to our own website. I did try that. I Googled it myself, and it does direct you to the information on our southkesteven.gov.uk website with information on the application process.
And because given that we are losing so much money on the markets, it does sort of beg the question, perhaps we need to be a little bit more proactive in the way we go out there to encourage traders on the markets. Perhaps we obviously have SK Today, which goes, I believe, into every door in South Kesteven. I don't know whether that is something that we could use going forward as a way to encourage people to trade on the markets. For example, in the Deepings, we've got a trader called Travelling the Groove. I think it's called Travelling the Groove, who started to trade during lockdown and trades, I believe, or was trading in Grantham and also in Stanford. But it was something that they did because they were, they became redundant and they couldn't work. So they saw the huge increase in vinyl, that there has been over, in recent years, and saw an opportunity on the markets to trade in vinyl. And so it could be that other people would see that opportunity, but it may not necessarily be something that they go on Google and look for. It could be something that perhaps we need to suggest to them, and perhaps could be done through our own publication, perhaps, as a thought.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, Democratic Services may have a view, but it may be that committee wants to consider a recommendation in terms of the marketing, because that's something we can do internally with the support of our comms team, and to look at that immediately, as it were.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Wheeler? No, Councillor Wheeler doesn't want to say. So, Councillor Moran, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, me again. As regards the advertising, I watch out for the market ones, because when you first started promoting the markets on Facebook and what have you, whoever the poor boy was that was in charge of it, he was getting days wrong. He was putting pictures of one market, advertising another market, and this, that, and the other. So I ended up bringing him up to say, right, these are the dates that these markets operate. And I'm now sending you 3 pictures of the markets, all right? So you get the right market, because just to get it right, I don't recall ever seeing anything about the markets saying, would you like a stall on Grantham Market? I can't believe it's passed me by, because I look at every post that goes up on the SKDC and the Visit and what's the other one? Is it Visit SK, or I can't remember what the other site is. I see them all because I've got the thing fixed up for that. Earlier on, I think it was Penny asked a question about how long you're on the waiting list at Stanford. Somebody did. I heard a voice, but I couldn't put a face to it. When I was operating on the Deepings Market, I straight away put in for a stall on Stanford Market as well. And in 12 months, I never got one. So that's what the waiting list is like. I will also say that unless there's been a sea change on the website, I've literally lost count of how many people had come up to me when the Deepings Market was running and saying, I've put an inquiry in via the website, like you told me to do, and I have heard nothing. And they would come back a couple of weeks later. I've heard nothing. And then I'd be ringing Paul Allen And then I'd be ringing Paul Stokes, working my way up the ladder to try and get some. And I could never get through to anyone to talk about the markets either. So I don't know whether that's all been sorted out. I don't know what was going on there. The final point I meant to mention on Richard, which was, what was it? What was one of his points I had an answer to? Oh, it was about doing additional days. Sadly, Richard, because somebody comes to the Saturday or the Friday market in Stanford, doesn't mean they're available the rest of the week. Almost every stallholder I've ever come across has basically got somewhere to go, except perhaps on a Monday, and nobody goes market shopping on a Monday. So adding additional days isn't necessarily another way to go. Certainly not for Grantham, because if we're losing 84,000, the only way to get that money back is to double the fees, double the income. And that's not going to happen with extra stall holders, because for every extra stall holder you have, that increases your employee costs, because it's longer, it's another build. So it's another 15, 20 minutes or whatever that an employee has to work, putting another stall up. I've definitely finished this time, Judy. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. One of the things that did cross my mind, the Buckminster Estate thing and the £12,000 covenant, is there anywhere else in Grantham that the market could be held that wouldn't incur that expense?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We are looking to see if there are any other places, but you also have to remember that, you know, market stall holders like to be in a certain position. So it's quite delicate, but we have looked at that. We've also talked about Buckminster Estate in the past, but it's something that obviously we will, you know, go back to and see where we can go from there.
Thank you very much, because obviously that's something that would slash the costs, you know, straight away. That, yeah. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Chair. Can I propose that we take a look at the marketing of the markets as a matter of urgency?
Would anybody like to second that? So, Councillor, shall we vote on that? So thank you, Andrew Cotton. We have now proposed and voted on having a look at the marketing of the market. So looking at the possibility of SK Today, not just relying on our Facebook page, looking at more proactively, perhaps engaging with colleges and so on to see if, you know, obviously we've got a college in Grantham. It could be that some of the students on some of the courses might want to start with a market stall. So thank you. The proposals that we have, have we finished with the debate from the council members, committee members? Thank you.
Chair. I'd like to speak on this item, please.
You haven't asked to speak, Councillor Baxter.
I'm entitled to speak.
Can I seek advice? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to confirm, Councillor Baxter is a political group leader. He has got the entitlement to speak on the item should he wish to.
Fine, thanks very much, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Coming back on a couple of bits, I'm grateful for the comments from the cabinet member regarding Buckminster. It does seem like an awful lot of money for Buckminster's contribution. I'd like clarity over whether we're paying them for some kind of charter entitlement or whether it's whether we're paying for the rent on the land. It's a charter thing. Okay. In that case, it probably doesn't matter where we put it if it's in Grantham Town Centre. So our only option is to go and plead with Buckminster to look at the state of the economy and to do the right thing for Grantham. In terms of the premises, which are on page 24, I think I've moved off my sheet. On page 24, the Grantham market expenses, they're very up and down. When you look at the employee expenses, they're increasing by, it looks like over 50%. More like 70%. Does that mean that the staff, we're either getting more staff or we're paying staff more? And on premises also,
we've established that if you look at the premises over the last 3 years, they've gone down a long way down, which I guess would be something to do with the pandemic, and then up, and now they're going up again. I certainly would like clarity over where that money's going, because the net contribution of this increase in employee and premises costs hasn't made significant difference to the bottom line in terms of income. So that's something that cannot be understood from the figures in front of us. Have we consulted, or do we consult with stall holders beyond exchanging money? And if not, do we have any kind of stall holders forum, or is there a method by which stall holders can come along with great ideas? Because it seems to me that people who are running market stalls may have some creative suggestions in terms of marketing. And I'm grateful to Councillor Stevens for mentioning Travelling the Groove, who have obviously spotted a gap in the market. Finally, your recommendation on the sheet is about consultants and paying those consultants from the Shared Prosperity Fund. When we first talked about the Shared Prosperity Fund, we acknowledged that it was a very limited budget and that we would probably be fighting like rats in a sack over how that money was. I think crabs in the bucket was the expression I used earlier about the money that's available. What order of, how much money are we talking about paying these external consultants? And are we sure that we've done enough consultation between ourselves or our known stakeholders before we go ahead and employ an expert to tell us what perhaps some of which we already know?
Thanks very much indeed. Would you like to come back on that, Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. A few different points there. So I think in terms of the market charter, or the charter, I think that was responded to. Again, happy to come back to committee with more detail in terms of the staffing costs, as we've already mentioned about premises costs, haven't we? So happy to provide that further information. In terms of consultation or engagement with current market traders, certainly the market supervisor has great working relationships with the market traders, I would say. And we do cover in the report in terms of consultation on page 26. It explicitly says there consultation with current and potential market traders. I think in relation to the consultancy or the specialist input, I guess that's us looking for the things that we don't know that are out there, and maybe verifying for us the things that we do know that those are correct. It is getting that external technical expertise and benchmarking that we don't have in-house. I would anticipate a consultancy piece of work of this nature to be within £6,000 to £10,000. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Did anyone want to come back on that? No? Okay, so the proposal, the recommendation to the council is that once the application process has been agreed, that we recommend a submission is made to the new UK Shared Prosperity Fund Committee to use an allocation from the fund to undertake a study to provide advice on improving the council's market offer. And also provides comments and suggestion to inform and steer the scope of the proposed studies that we are providing, and I think we have done this afternoon, suggestions to inform and steer the scope of that study. So that part of the question has been fulfilled. That is a recommendation that we ask for that funding, and I think you said that would be in the region of £6,000 to £10,000 for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which I believe is 3.5 million across the whole district if we are successful in our bid. So I believe the bid had to go in at the beginning of August, which it has done, and we should hear by the end of November. Sorry, October. Sorry, John. Yeah.
Not at all. It's £3.8 million is the total. £3.8 million is the total allocation.
Yeah.
And we should hear in time to receive the first payment in early October is the guidance that we were given at the time of our submission.
Have we had any indication of how?
Only that they've received it and are looking at it along with the other 400 plus that they received at the end of August.
But at least we got it in. So
Yes, we did. Thank you.
congratulations on that. So yeah, so we're looking at 6 to 10,000 pounds of that 3.8 million for this particular study. So how do we feel about that as a committee? Do we want to recommend that we go forward with that? So Moran.
If no one else is going to speak, I don't think we should. I think we're rushing off to consultants too soon. Option C says introduce changes to practice as outlined in the body of the report. This would demonstrate the Commission commitment to improvement. I think we need the breakdown of where all these costs are coming from. Then we can sensibly look at cutting down the costs, hopefully, once we know what every individual line's for, rather than, you know, just 10 or 12 or whatever we've got, no, 6 different categories. I think it's true across the board at SKDC that we're just bringing consultants. It's like, oh, well, we don't know. Well, we can find out. It would, I mean, something like Grantham Market, it would take one person, one day, with a set of questions to visit every single store on Grantham Market and answer a questionnaire. Ask them for their views, ask them what they like, what they don't like, you know, and that gives us a load of information. If it doesn't, and it turns out to be rubbish, or if we go through all the costs and we can't find anywhere where we can cut down the costs, then let's then pay for a consultant to tell us what we're not seeing. But we don't even know what we know yet. Anyway, thank you.
Were you indicating, Councillor Whelan?
I'm very happy to speak, but literally I agree with what Councillor Moran said. I think we are very quick to throw money at consultants, and really there isn't a lot of money going around, and I can think of other better ways of spending that money. So I would support Councillor Moran.
Councillor Fellows.
Equally, equally so would I. Councillor Moran is absolutely right. We don't need to do that. We need to look at what the costs are, see if there's any savings, and then perhaps follow the guidelines that Councillor Moran has suggested.
Councillor Robbins.
Thank you. I think we, after today's everybody's opinions, I think we need to look into those ideas first before we go for anything else. I'd like to also know when the last study was done and what was highlighted on that study, and if the study made a difference, and what did we take away from that? I'd like to know some information on that.
Councillor Thomas, did you speak? No. I think the consensus generally is that we need some more information before we go down the route of commissioning a study into this. Would that reflect the committee's opinions? Yeah. So I don't know if that would hold anything up in terms of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, but I think we probably need some more clarity on the costs and actually on our marketing of just from a baseline really to look at marketing of the stalls, particularly on the sensitive markets in Grantham and in Bourne. I think we really need actively to engage with the communities to see what we can tease out of them, because quite honestly, Bourne is a very, vibrantly growing community. And I think we have on this committee, although in probably previous years, discussed looking at the opportunities that some of the events that happen, the car events, that sort of thing, to encourage, a crossover with some of the market stalls, perhaps outside of the conventional fruit and veg stalls that go on. There are other things that perhaps we could look at. But yeah, so is that possible, Andrew, to bring back a bit more of a detailed report to give to the committee next time? Okay, that's super. Right, are we all happy with that? Right, okay, let's move on. Councillor Wheeler, sorry.
Sorry, before we move on, I just wanted to say that the 2 members of the public have attended to speak, and as far as I'm aware, they weren't told that their contribution was moving down the agenda. I had a quiet word with the one who's in the room now. He's been here for over an hour. I don't know how much time he's got. I'm just requesting whether it would be possible to offer them the opportunity to speak now, because their item isn't for a little bit longer. I don't know about the person who's on Zoom, but would it be possible, Madam Chairman, to make that offer to them?
Well, we could bring the item forward, could we? Karen, could we bring so if we brought the refresh of the cultural strategy number 10 forward and dealt with that now, and then it would be possible for Steve Burnett and for Councillor Cleaver to speak now. I don't know about Henry Thornston because of the Zoom. Do you know about that? He's online now. Yeah, okay. Would you be happy, Karen, for us to bring that forward? Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chairman, do you think you need to vote, make sure that you've got your committee going with you on this one, that they're happy? I'm sure they are, but just to make sure everything's
Thank you.
right.
They are. That's great. Thank you very much. So, right. So Councillor Cleaver, then, if you would like to speak on this item, and then Steve Burnett, we'll ask you to speak then.
Thank you, Chairman. The cultural policies of SKDC impact a lot in Stanford, hence my concern to speak on this item. I am concerned, as are many people in Stanford, about the future of the Arts Centre and what we can do to ensure that it thrives as it has done previously, and that it does act as a hub to build our community together, and also acts as a vibrant centre in support of building our tourist and visitor economy. So the points I've made, which I understand have been circulated to everybody, I think speak for themselves. I think the cultural output of this council is something that we have been able to take great pride in the past when we consider what we have been able to achieve compared to neighbouring authorities. It's something that one thinks particularly that South Kesteven District Council can take pride in and be very pleased with what we've done. It's therefore really all the more important that isn't taken away and that isn't removed. The Arts Centre is one of the jewels in Stanford's crown, as Stanford is one of the jewels in SKDC's crown. And I don't think anyone would like that situation to be compromised. So therefore, it is with great concern and passion that I speak to ensure and implore the committee that our cultural strategy is not one of retreating and walking away. It is actually one where we wish to strengthen and build on what we already have, which is, I think, widely admired, particularly in bordering counties. Rutland has nothing to compare to this. And as I think the previous report showed, people from Rutland do actually come to Stanford Arts Centre, the major part of our audience, because they have nothing within their own borders. And to a large extent, the same is true of Peterborough as well. And I think we should be building on that again and not retreating from it. So I am therefore concerned, and the points I've made are trying to strengthen what this strategy is going to contain when it's written and when it's drafted, in light of the things that I've said with that ambition. And again, I know I repeat myself on this a lot, but the question is, we have a growing population. We've planned for a growing population, and we need to plan our cultural strategy in the light of a growing population. I am very conscious as a ward councillor, in my ward particularly, that we do very much need to expand the offer that we make across the entire community, including the younger people and the people who across all socioeconomic groups as well. And so really, I'd just like like to commend my comments to the committee and hope that you will find them worthy of consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleaver. Steve Burnett, would you like to come down here to the, just down there?
Right. Well, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak to this committee. I'm here because I'm aware of unease amongst many people in Stanford about what I would describe as the moribund state of the Stanford Arts Centre. I use the word moribund advisedly. It lacks vitality, vigor, and energy. But that doesn't mean that it hasn't the potential to be vital, alive, and glowing with health. So I'm not here to criticize, attack, or demonize anybody. We all understand the unprecedented impact of the lockdowns over the last couple of years. But we also understand the need, as Councillor Cleaver just mentioned, for urgent action to give the centre a chance to flourish. I've been to several meetings of concerned users and supporters of the Arts Centre. I was also very grateful to meet Karen Whitfield a couple of weeks ago with some others when she was in Stanford to hear some of the thoughts about her plans for the future. But in summary, my thoughts are that in the current state of the centre's decline, I do understand the desire to reduce the cost of running it. Staffing, though, has been cut to the bone, to the point where they're doing multiple tasks, some of which they're not equipped to do properly. They're desperately keen, many of them, to see the institution flourish, but they don't necessarily have the time, experience, or contacts to make this happen. The impression I get is that they don't really know what to do, what they're supposed to do to start rebuilding the activity of the centre. When I've talked to them, it seems that they're not being directed or led adequately or given flexibility to make decisions themselves on the ground. The staff are either in the dark or have been told not to communicate about what's going on with the people of Stanford. When I've talked to them, as I say, sorry, I lost my space there. So that's really what's behind the sense of unease amongst those of us who are concerned about the state of things, the lack of communication. There's no need to list all the different elements that speak of decline or morbidity because you can feel it when you walk in the door. So I'd like to suggest some thoughts about what could be done now to increase the footfall and revenue that is so vital to inject life into the Arts Centre. Establish a group, you can call it the Friends of Stanford Arts Centre or whatever is appropriate, but that they should have input and responsibility to achieve some of the following. Reopening the cafe as a matter of urgency. Set a deadline. Bring back the information centre. The area in which it was located is currently unused for anything. The volunteers who run it in St. John's Church could continue to run it in the Arts Centre. Visitors naturally gravitate towards the Arts Centre for advice on what to do in Stanford. Whilst I understand that tourism does not fall into the remit of the Culture Committee, it seems crazy to ignore that opportunity to generate traffic through the centre at minimal cost. Allow local people under the direction and management of the staff team to generate activity within the Arts Centre. This is already happening. The recent Diversity Festival, Karen Neal's recent exhibition with workshops for families, but it could and should be further encouraged. Specifically target local schools and colleges. Their art and music departments should be invited to have exhibitions, put on concerts, stage plays in the centre. This would get their families at least and friends to attend the centre. They might not be in the habit of doing so at the moment. In order to get younger people into the Arts Centre, ensure a regular flow of bands or performers that will appeal to them, promoted through social media and perhaps the schools. Right now, there are huge gaps in the gallery schedule. I got an email last week that showed until the end of next year, there are 47 weeks in which there's no scheduled content in the gallery.
30 seconds. Thank you.
So I think the most important aspect of everything we're talking about is to communicate with local people about what's planned, so that the council can tap into the undoubted goodwill that exists within the community to see the arts centre flourish. Right now, there's huge frustration amongst arts centre users who see an institution that appears to be dying on its feet and have not been able to get answers to some of the questions we've been asking.
Thank you very much indeed. And we are also, actually, just to let you know, this is a culture and visitor economy OSC, so we are partly responsible for the tourism as well.
Okay, well, I think, Karen, you mentioned that that wasn't part of the remit when we met. Okay.
So, sorry, Karen.
Cool. All righty.
Okay. Thanks very much indeed. So can we hear from Henry Swanston now, Jordan? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Did you want to? Yeah. Sorry, Karen. Can I ask you to come back on that? Thank you. Before we hear from Henry. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah. That was really great to hear from Stephen Burnett. Obviously, as you said, I did go and meet with Stephen and a group of committed individuals in Stanford, and it was a really positive meeting, and I was really pleased to be able to put forward some of the plans and obviously the passion that the council has for that venue as well. I just wanted to come back on a couple of points, if that is okay. Obviously, this committee will be aware that the staffing structure across the Arts Service has been reduced. That was following I think 2 separate reports following the Independent Arts Review. And obviously that decision was made on the recommendation of this committee and by Cabinet later. Actually, what I would say though is, you know, just today I've heard some real positives about the staff, because particularly in Stanford, it's taken a while for that staffing structure to bed in, but there are some really green shoots of success. And I was really pleased to hear a compliment today about a couple of members of staff from Councillor Wheeler. So that's really important, but we are supporting those staff. We understand it's difficult going through a period of transition, but we've recently made an interim appointment to the Arts and Cultural Services Manager, and very much she is tasked with embedding those changes within the team and making sure it's more cohesive. Most of what is said, I agree with. We need the community input into the centre going forward. Pleased to say we are currently marketing the opportunity for the cafe, so that is live through Banks Long. We've actually got our first visit booked this Thursday, so we'll have an interested person looking through. And I agree, we need to get that cafe in there desperately. However, I think it's not the time to set a deadline. We've set a deadline around the things we can inform, as in getting it marketed, but actually it's well documented. We've had informal conversations about the difficulty with the previous operator. It's more important for me that we get the right operator in there with a chance of success. In terms of bringing back the information centre, more than happy to have some conversations in that regard, because there is space, and if there is volunteer will, that's something we'd absolutely love to have those conversations. And you know, we do encourage the local community to get involved, and specifically within terms of younger people. So New College Stanford hold their show at Stanford Arts Centre. We have Wildcats Youth Drama and Pizzazz Dance Academy that has a range of students from across the area. So that is another area that, you know, more than willing and able to encourage. I think just one point on the gallery. So we're looking at some changes to the fees and charges, but actually speaking to council officers this morning, we've actually got interest and slots booked now till May 2023, and we're actually taking inquiries into 2024. So that is a really healthy form of activity at the Arts Centre. So hopefully that's helpful, providing that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Karen. So if we can hear from Henry Swanston, thank you.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, thank you. And apologies for not being able to join you in person this afternoon. I think going to echo many of the points made by Councillor Cleaver and Steve Burnett, and I'm going to use the C word of community. just really going to go through a couple of points with relation to my role and the reason I'm here. I, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak, but I'm incumbent chair of Stanford Shoestring Theatre Company. So we are the resident company of Stanford Arts Centre, as stipulated in our agreement with the centre. We are termed the resident company. We present 4 main house productions a year alongside numerous roadshow events, and we curate an extensive legacy that stretches back 80 years in the building and wider afield. We are, I like to think, as a company highly respected in the town and the wider environs. We currently have a membership of over 120, many of whom are very active. But as I'm sure Councillor Cleaver and Steve Burnett will both attest, there are many, many people from wider afield than Stanford who use and access our productions. We believe, as a company, and I speak for the company here, that the heart of strong and sensitive arts provision is the community on which that provision is built. And the coherence that's engendered by connection between the said community and the artistic offer that's available to it. Without the community, there is no offer. Without the offer, there is no community. Our concern, which we understand and appreciate, has been aired previously, and also thank you to Karen, who gave me some time a couple of weeks ago when she was in Stanford to allow me to discuss some of these points with her, and it was a very positive meeting in that regard in terms of what looks to be mooted. We are concerned that the continued provision of Stanford Arts Centre is a vibrant and thriving community endeavour, because as Steve attested to, it is neither vibrant nor thriving at the moment, and it used to be. Without footfall in the Arts Centre, from our level, there are fewer seats sold at productions. There's a disconnect that's brought about by a lack of coherence and a lack of accessibility. Analysis of our ticket sales as a company indicates that post-pandemic, we are naturally selling fewer seats overall as the sector itself is in trouble. However, we note there's been a shift in proportion of seats sold. So there is a falling percentage of concessions, which means a greater proportion of full house or full price seats, therefore indicative perhaps of a younger audience. And that younger audience needs a continued reason to attend these things. We feel that in order to support a coherent cultural community, Stanford Arts Centre needs to be seen as, and meet the expectations of, more than simply rooms for hire by peripatetic amateurs. It needs to attract and retain professional touring productions. It needs to speak to its public. It needs to attract them in. It needs to keep them in. It needs to be a place where community can come together to engage in the arts, either as practitioners or as patrons. And it needs to be a hospitable place, and it needs to provide hospitality. It needs to be the beating heart of that vibrant artistic population that Councillor Cleaver alluded to. That population is craving to use a centre that, as Steve Burnett pointed out, is not currently, I think, fit for its artistic purpose. It may, I dread to think that it will fall away as a mere anachronism or some sort of glorified village hall. It is a building with a legacy, it has a history, but it's also got a future. It's rich in potential. What it needs is careful, sensitive curation, and it needs further investment to draw the public across its threshold and experience high quality artistic provision. If people come to the Arts Centre and they see that there's a show on, they will stay in the town. They will retain they will spend money in the independent businesses in and around the Arts Centre that are openly supporting it as a venture, and they will boost the economy of the town overall. We as a company, first of all, appreciate that our considerations are being acknowledged and appreciate the opportunity to speak in this forum. And we hope that Stanford Arts Centre will not be allowed to fade away or worse still, fall into careless cultural disrepair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Henry. If Karen could come back on that. And the Arts Centre per se isn't on the agenda today, but Karen will come back. And then more broadly, we'll be talking about the cultural strategy in which that may come up in. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As Mr. Sonston said, I was really happy to meet him a couple of weeks ago, and I have to say, I think our collective ambitions are aligned in terms of what Shoestring are expecting to see and what the council are hoping to deliver. I think we have to be honest and say, you know, we have come out of a pandemic, and that has had an effect across all sectors, and particularly at theatres. We had an extended period of closure. Unfortunately, that coincided with the loss of our cafe operator. And, you know, I agree, you walk into the Guildhall Arts Centre now and it's buzzing and it's full of people, and there currently is that lacking from Stanford Arts Centre. But as I said, we are actively marketing that as an opportunity. I have to say, the council took a really careful approach in the COVID recovery in terms of our programming, and very much have had to test out different types of events. We've had to assess how audience are responding to those events and whether people are coming back. And, you know, we've done some targeted marketing around that. And I have to say, it's really pleasing. And ticket sales are increasing and the numbers of people attending events are increasing. And we hope that will continue. And I think it's fair to say, and you know, myself and Mr. Sonson did have this conversation, and I take on board his his views about ticket sales, but I think we do have to remember, and I think Mr. Sonson alluded to it when we met, that a couple of their latest productions have been quite challenging in terms of their content. So actually there is a thing to look at there, I think, for shoestring, and happy to have that conversation and support with that. I mean, in terms of our professional offer, what I would say is from the autumn period and onwards, we are getting back to pre-pandemic kind of levels of shows. And we've got a range of professional and live performances which will be available to watch. And many of our professional theatre companies are asking to come back year after year. So, you know, we must be doing something right. We're not got it all right at this current moment in time. There is work to do. But I hope the committee feels assured from the conversations today that we are absolutely on it, and we want to get to our new normal that everybody is happy and comfortable with. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Just before we go on to discussion of the development of the cultural strategy, I think Paul Fellows wanted to say something.
Yep. Thanks, Chair. I wanted to come on this because it was so very specific. They're not wrong, are they? Stephen, sorry, the gentleman from Shoestring, whose name I've forgotten already, they're absolutely on the money. And it's where we all want to be. We want Stanford Arts Centre to be the vibrant centre that the gentlemen are describing. And I'm of a mind to potentially suggest, can we have a look at the management structure of it? Can we actually challenge the gentlemen who've spoken so well today to actually put their money where their mouth where the money is, their mouth where the money is, whichever. Get together with Karen, perhaps look at the management structure of Stanford Arts Centre. Shoestring is so much a part of Stanford Arts Centre. They are the resident theatre company. They should have a big say in what's happening there on a year-to-year basis, but also be able to develop all the ideas that I've heard this afternoon, encouraging young people and schools to perform, getting people involved that are prepared to look at, invest time in getting groups and artists into it. Let's face it, we can't solve the problem of Stanford Arts Centre as a district council. We could pay someone to do it or hire someone. And I know that we've got excellent people who are working in that light, but whether or not they can bring the artistic expertise that the Arts Centre will need, I doubt. I would think that perhaps a look at the management structure of the Arts Centre, involving the community for their expertise and their input is vital, because it is only something that will develop as a holistic project.
Thank you, Councillor Fellows. When we look at the development of the cultural strategy, I think that is one of the things that we're going to be looking at as part of that, in terms of our partnerships and so on. That can come back, Karen.
Yeah, thank you. Just to reassure Councillor Fellows and members here today, both in the conversations that I had with Mr. Sonston and Mr. Burnett, we have talked about setting up like a focus group for Stanford Arts Centre. So probably it might meet quarterly or twice a year. We've not agreed that between ourselves yet, but I think there's a range of interested parties which could come to that forum and put forward suggestions and requests, and I think that would be a really useful forum and help us achieve some of that community ownership that I think Councillor Fellows is talking about. So I've already tasked officers to start looking at ways we could set that up.
That's great. Thanks very much indeed. Councillor Wheeler.
I know we're about to move on to the cultural strategy, so I've got lots of comments that I'll say for that. But I just wanted to say a thank you to the two members of the public who've spoken so eloquently about Stanford Arts Centre particularly. They represent the tip of the iceberg. There are so many community groups they're speaking on behalf of, and the passion for Stanford Arts Centre is immense. I'd also like to thank Karen, because she has been very open in recent weeks and come forward and taken time in Stanford to speak to these groups. And I really hope that that will build into what you're suggesting, and that we all work together, because we all want to see the Arts Centre thrive. You missed the opportunity, Henry, to plug California Suite, which actually opens tonight. And if this meeting finishes in time, I will be there. So I'd like to recommend to every single one of the people in this room that over the next 5 nights, they come into Stanford Arts Centre and see the amazing work that Stanford Shoestring do. And good luck with that tonight, Henry.
Thanks you, Amanda. I'm front of house.
So moving on to the development of the cultural strategy for the district, would you like to introduce that, Councillor Rosemary Trollope-Bellew?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And thank you to obviously both gentlemen that spoke just now, so as Councillor Wheely said so eloquently. I am pleased to present this report today, detailing the work the Council proposes to do to develop a refreshed cultural strategy for the district. A key priority within the Council's Corporate Plan 2020 to 2023 is the development of a refreshed cultural strategy for the district. As a council, we continue to place significant value and invest heavily into our arts and cultural services, fully acknowledging the benefit of this in terms of attracting visitors to the district and improving the health and social well-being of our residents. When looking to refresh our cultural strategy, it is vital that this clearly identifies and articulates the council's vision for the service, and also sets out how the council will work with other providers to promote cultural opportunities within the district. It is increasingly clear that the cultural landscape, including the expectations and behaviour of our residents and customers, have changed following the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, given the challenging financial backdrop, it is even more important that the council invests its financial resources effectively, ensuring there are clear outcomes and the service offer value for money. The paper before you today details the approach we wish to take in securing external expert support to develop a new cultural strategy with the full support and input of this committee. The report also details headline topics for inclusion within the refreshed strategy and welcomes further suggestions. Recommendations of the report to this committee are: considers the key themes suggested for inclusion in the new strategy and makes any further recommendations for consideration, and endorses the commencement of a procurement exercise to appoint a suitably qualified consultant to work with officers and members of the cultural and visitor economy of the Scrutiny Committee to develop a new cultural strategy for the district. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. So are there any comments from the members on this suggestion that we look at looking at the cultural strategy by employing somebody to look at it and go through it with us? And if there are any other items for consideration that you feel that they need to be looking at, apart from the list that is listed on page 105. Of course, we did speak about festivals earlier on this afternoon. Councillor Wheeler.
Well, just an initial comment would be, it's really important that we get the right person to do this. The last culture strategy or culture report was done by a company that were based in the leisure industry and had no experience, from what I could make out, of actually understanding arts centres. So if we're looking at employing somebody to do this, can we make sure we choose somebody with a track record of working within the arts world, please?
Thank you very much. I also welcome that the comments that the committee will be involved quite extensively with the report when it's being done. So that's obviously to be welcomed, because I think last time we weren't quite as involved as that. So that will, obviously, there are key concerns here, particularly the delivery of festivals and so on, which we discussed earlier, and obviously the Arts Centre, which has come up this afternoon. I will mention there is in here, we are looking at the governance really, and the different ways in which we can look at delivering the arts, particularly through the arts centres. And I know Steve Burnett talked about a potential of a Friends of Stanford Arts Centre. And I am sort of, obviously, I have to say that when we were faced with the closure of the Deepings Library, we did set up a Friends of Deeping Library, who now effectively run the day-to-day. They don't run the day-to-day, but they do look at the governance and the strategies and the policies and so on of the library. And we are now one of the most successful in Lincolnshire. So I think having a Friends group to look at the overall running of something, you know, in straitened circumstances, while it may not be totally desirable under normal considerations, it may be a way forward to look at the running of the Stanford Arts Centre. It would be certainly something for an outside body to have a look at and to see what the potential will be there. And certainly the Deepings, I can speak for the Friends of Deeping Library, I'm sure we'll be able to input into that if necessary. Thank you. Councillor Fellows.
Continuing a point I think you raised, Madam Chairman, what we need is people, and we need people who get on your nerves because they keep banging on about wanting things to happen in their community. We want people who are prepared to go out and spend weekends and evenings working with young people or with groups and making things happen. And where do you get these people from? I think a starting point is giving them permission, giving our community permission to get involved. And perhaps what you're saying about focus groups or groups is potentially a way of doing it. We can pay hundreds of thousands of people per pounds for someone to come in and say, oh, you need to do that, that, and that. But unless you pay people to do that, and that, it's not going to happen. So what you have to do is get people within our community who are given the permission and the encouragement to do all those things, so our arts become vibrant, but they become from the people who deliver it. So the report's great. We need to push ahead with it. We need to contribute to it. But the notion that we can suddenly pay someone who's going to come up with a brilliant idea, for me, is an absolute nonsense. Our community in South Kesteven is totally rich with people who are creative and artistic and who want to have an audience for their work and who want to work with people and develop that work. So I would love to see come out of this some way in which those people are given permission to do that, are encouraged to do that, and then are supported to do that. And then hopefully from that will come a basis of positive arts work across our whole area.
Thank you, Councillor Fellows. What you're actually describing is a different way of delivering the arts, isn't it? And it's perhaps a more cost-effective and sustainable way of delivering them going forward.
I can just answer that. I don't see a contradiction in ways. I think we're all going in the same direction. It's just finding in these times we're in the most effective and the best way of enabling all those things we want to happen.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. Yeah, following on from what Councillor Fellows has said, again, you know, we're short on money, and is the best use of our money spending it on getting another consultant? Or when we've got such amazing, vibrant community groups who are calling out to us and telling us they're desperate to work with us, would it not be better to follow the practice of getting those groups together and getting them to take ownership of how they see the cultural strategy for our district being? So it's a bottom-up approach. Instead of us paying someone to tell us what we should be doing, listen to the community groups that are already using our services and crying out to be involved. They're offering us their time. You know, these two men are very busy and they've committed to spending an afternoon with us in order to share their thoughts. Why don't we harness them rather than spend money on expensive consultants who will be working from the outside in? I just, you know, just think that's a waste of money when we've got the resources and we've got the people and the passion locally.
Thanks very much, Karen.
Thank you. I don't actually disagree with what Councillor Reeve is saying. I think the two need to happen in tandem. So within the corporate plan, there is a key priority to develop a refresh cultural strategy. And for me, it's really important that we set our stall out as a council, because we continue to invest heavily. If we want to protect that investment as we go forward, we've got to have a clear strategic rationale for why we invest in the arts and why we continue to do so. So I think that piece of work needs to happen, but I agree it needs to be in conjunction and in consultation with the local community. And, you know, we're happy, more than happy for them to have an input into this. And I did explain that to Mr. Burnett when we met. I think in terms of the money, we're currently got a saving from the Arts and Cultural Services Manager role that we're carrying. It was envisaged if the person within that role would have done this piece of work. Members of this committee will remember that's the process we use for the sport and physical activity strategy. So we came right early doors, set the scope, had the committee involvement all the way through. This is directly in response to a gap in our current establishment list and a gap in our current resources and skills. So I agree there needs to be lots of community involvement, but there does need to be a skeleton or a scope around that we're all agreed. And that would be my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Do you want to speak? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to echo Councillor Stephen's words with regards to welcoming the recommendation to be fully involved in the development of the cultural strategy, as I would imagine all of the committee members would agree.
Thank you. Was there anybody else? Councillor Fellows and then Councillor Baxter.
Sorry, Chair. I wasn't going to make this point, but I feel like I needed to. It was something I heard it a short while ago. We should not need to justify the arts. We should not need to put forward a case for the arts being in our community. We should not even consider it. It is fundamental. It is important. It is vibrant. It brings income into our area. And I would love it should never even be mentioned in a meeting. There should not be any justification in spending money on the arts per se. I can go with the argument a particular project needs to be justified or a particular way of working needs to be justified. But overall, let's embrace it. This is what makes us human, for goodness sake.
Thanks, Councillor Fellows. I think we all agree with that, don't we? Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the conversation about the cultural strategy, and I certainly think that in developing it, we should involve a wider audience, including other councillors beyond this committee. As you know, I'm hearing Councillor Cleaver and Councillor Dixon Warren are obviously interested in this broad subject, and in this room on this committee, I don't think we have anyone from Grantham at all, and so that for me is a gap that should be filled, and it should be an open, frank and transparent conversation. I'll ask again, how much are we anticipating the cost of the consultants? Do we read that because we're doing a procurement exercise that it's above the minimum procurement threshold of £10,000, or I suppose you could have a procurement exercise which was less than £10,000. A ballpark figure would be useful. I certainly agree with Councillor Wheeler that this kind of thing should be bottom up, and I think we've got more to learn from shoestring theatre than we do from a consultant from far distance. And we've got plenty of organisations, including some of the ones that you're involved in, Councillor Stevens, who are putting on arts and events and festivals that know how it is done, and know how it is done on a shoestring, not to make a pun. In the meeting earlier on, you talked about the raft race and the literary festival and the duck race and so many other events around the district, which are done, some of them with help from South Kesteven, some of them without help from South Kesteven. Surely one of the key things we need to do, if we're spending our budget wisely, is to make sure that we make the best use of those organisations that are already doing stuff, including raft race committees, literary festival committees and town and parish councils especially. So that's what I mean by bottom up, really. The people who are already doing it know more than the consultant that we'll get from somewhere else. I'd like to mention Michael Cross. I have no idea how much the services of Michael Cross cost, but he was definitely an asset to the council when he was here. He's gone, he's well remembered, but having someone like that who could coordinate the activity was definitely a benefit. I don't know how much it cost. And finally, on the festivals, yes, you did have a workshop, a secret meeting about festivals earlier in the afternoon, where members of the committee were able to discuss items. As you know, I wasn't allowed to speak at that meeting, so I'd certainly welcome the opportunity of that any future workshops should be open to all councillors, with all ideas welcome, and as transparent as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that, Karen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. With regard to the cost, the simple answer is at the moment, we don't know. So we'd like to put an expression of interest out there, but it's very much on the agreed scope from this committee. So once we've got that, we can go to the market and do some soft target market testing. And I think irrespective of the cost, it would be really important that it was an open procurement, because it goes back to the point that Councillor Wheeler made. It needs to be a suitably qualified person or consultancy who could work with us on this. And just one point of clarification, the previous independent arts review was done by Sport and Leisure Consultancy, so they do have a cultural arm. So although they are a sports consultancy, it was a specific cultural consultant that worked with us for the majority of the time. I kind of agree with Councillor Paul Fellows as well. I don't think we should justify investment in the arts. I'm really passionate about that, but unfortunately we live in a really challenging financial situation at the time. So it's really important that we agree what that scope is and shout about how important it is and the impact that we have on the communities. So I think that will definitely be an outcome of the cultural strategy. And I suppose, we just need to make sure that we have got that community involvement in that, and there's a broad range of consultation. So I don't disagree with some of what's been said.
Councillor Wheeler.
Oh, sorry, just to come back again. I think we really should harness the goodwill of the local community groups. That's the main thing. And if we can find someone who's prepared to act as a consultant from amongst our community rather than from an outside body, I think that would be the ideal thing. If we're going to spend money, let's spend it on people who already know what they're talking about and already care about the services that we provide. So I would in general support, even though I don't like the idea of having a consultant, I would support it if the consultant was suitably qualified and from within our, first of all, offered to people who are already within our community. I would love to see the likes of Henry or Stephen leading this project for us. I think they're very suitably qualified if they'd be interested.
Councillor, sorry, let's call you Councillor Nicola McQuaid-Brown.
Thank you very much. I think that procurement rules would prevent us from specifying the location and who we wanted, but there would be nothing stopping anybody locally who is suitably qualified applying for the procurement opportunity. And in fact, we would welcome that from happening.
Thank you. Councillor Fellows.
I'm assuming the answer will be yes, but I am going to ask it anyway. Before a consultant is appointed, will that appointment come before this committee, and will we be told the cost of that appointment and the basis on which it needs to be considered?
Again, Nicola, can you come back on that? Oh, Karen.
I'm happy to provide an update at the next committee, or so it doesn't delay work, an update by committee members about the outcome.
And obviously that would be confidential if we were looking at funding, so we wouldn't be having a secret meeting. We would have to, but that would have to be confidential, I think. Thank you. Councillor.
Just to clarify, the cost of this would be coming from a payroll saving. So nationally, there are issues with recruitment, and we went out 3 times to find a suitably qualified arts and cultural services manager who could have delivered this piece of work for us. As my colleague Nicola McCoy-Brown will attest, we went through a really rigorous appointment process, lots of interviews, but there was just nobody out there suitably qualified. So the cost of this is being met in budget, but from a payroll saving.
Thanks very much. So, Councillor Moran, you haven't spoken. No.
Sorry, I just want to support what both Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Fellows has said. I think, as I said in the earlier meeting, we lose sight of the assets we have amongst our own residents. We don't consult them enough. We don't bring them in. We spend a lot of time visiting things on them. And I think we should consult them more often. And I'm absolutely positive if you put a shout out to the people who do events at the Guildhall, do events like Shoestring do, all the people who put things on at the Stanford Arts Centre, Born at the Corn Exchange and what have you, and invite them. Even if, I mean, it would make an enormous meeting if they all took you up on the offer, but so be it. And make it a brainstorming meeting, and something gradually out of that will become a skeleton of the way we need to proceed. There are tons of people out there who run events who would gladly give their time to making these venues work and making them work cost effectively. As I said in the previous item, we're too quick to run to a consultant, way too quick. So that's just my view on it. Thank you.
I think that obviously one of the things that you ask for in the recommendations that you have obviously a steer from us as to what the scope should be for the remit of the cultural strategy, and it's coming across quite clearly that one of those things should be the way in which we engage with the population, how we engage with our communities, specifically with those who are looking at their cultural delivery, and that we should really harness that obviously pool of talent that we've got. But it is more than just the Arts Centre, and it is more than just what we do already, isn't it? It's what is out there that's within, the art of the possible. We're looking at new territory now. We're all really going to be looking at a whole different way of delivering things that we have delivered in the past. For example, festivals that we discussed earlier on this afternoon, where in the past we've had perhaps a pot of money that we could then use to put on festivals for people. We're perhaps now looking at ways in which we can inventively put on festivals, but perhaps not ourselves, but encourage and facilitate others to do so. So I think that we need to look at the art of what is possible and what is out there and how we can move forward and effectively deliver the arts in South Kesteven, because I think Councillor Fellows is quite right. Arts are very much an important part of how we are as people. They define us in many ways, and particularly when we're in straitened circumstances, particularly when we have the issues of mental health and so on, they're even more important than they perhaps were at times of plenty. So I think that we really do need to be very careful about how we deliver our cultural services going forward. And I do think that we need somebody in this instance to look at the art of the possible, to look at the different ways in which we're delivering already in South Kesteven and ways in which we can move forward and perhaps be more effective, more cost effective, more sustainable, and how we go forward in the future. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm mindful of the fact that we've spent quite a lot of time talking about the cultural strategy. Councillor Cleaver also sent an email around which was specific to Stanford Arts Centre. I also have a number of comments which are very specific to Stanford Arts Centre. In view of the fact that we're not specifically discussing Stanford Arts Centre now, I'm just wondering whether we can reschedule the cancelled meeting for October and put the individual art centres and leisure centres back on the agenda, because it seems to me that there's a lot more we need to be talking about, and it's also fairly urgent.
I think that the way in which we deliver arts, as I've said, through the arts centres will become part of the cultural strategy. So I think we need to move ahead with that, get somebody looking at it, get that contract out there, and let's see what comes forward, because I think we will, and it has, obviously it is written down that we will be part of that process going forward in perhaps a way that we weren't in the previous arts review, but we will as committee members be part of the process looking at the new cultural strategy, and we will be able to input. It may well be that we would need to call a meeting for that. We may not need to, but certainly it's something that I think, first of all, we need to, if we all agree this afternoon that we need to move forward with a cultural strategy, to look at the procurement, to find the right person out there, whether it's local or elsewhere, to start working with us together to develop a strategy going forward. If we agree that, then I think there will be times when we will need to meet, and hopefully if we can get that underway sooner rather than later. Thank you.
In which case, can I add to that proposal that we move ahead with the cultural strategy? Karen's proposal, I think, was it four, I can't even remember what it was, 3 monthly meetings with community groups or something that you suggested that sounded particularly good. So I'm keen that we harness the community involvement.
Just to clarify, I've already instructed officers to start work on forming that group, so that is already in train.
That is a focus group that you mentioned earlier on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can they be tasked specifically with working with whoever we have as a consultant? Is that possible to tie those things together or not?
I would suggest that they would be a valuable consultation group. So yeah.
Okay, is that okay? Okay, so that proposal then, does that have our approval? That recommendation, Councillor Fellows, is that a vote in favour? I would vote in favour. Councillor Thomas, Councillor Robbins, Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Moore. Yeah, that's approved. Thank you very much.
As a quick rider to that, Chair, can I just, because I don't want it to go without just pass by, I really do feel that the cancelled meeting in October was probably cancelled for the right reasons, but because of everything I've heard this afternoon and the way we need to be consulted and we need to move forwards, I really would ask the chair to consider reinstating that meeting unless the meeting after it is quick enough so that we can get involved with what we're planning.
At the moment, the next meeting after that, I think, is on December the 6th. This is following the normal form. You know, last year we had one in October. That was a special meeting to discuss the leisure centre. I think we shouldn't hamstring ourselves at the moment with another meeting before we've appointed a consultant. But I'm very much in favour of obviously meeting with a consultant and being able to input in the way that we have said that we would this afternoon. So I'm not going to say now we'll have one in October, but I will say that as soon as we've got somebody on board and we can be involved in that process, that we most certainly will have a meeting with them. Is that okay, Karen? Thank you. Okay. Is that okay, Councillor Fellows? Are you happy with that? There's no point in having a meeting in October if we haven't got someone on board.
Sorry, Chair, I'm very much a meeting man. We talk, we move forwards. And I think that from now until December is what, 3 months? Now, if this committee is convinced that it can do its scrutiny on that timescale, I'm not going to argue with it. But I do think issues come up time and time again that by the time we end up talking about them, like the markets, 6 months has gone, 12 months have gone, and we seem to be talking about the same things over and over again. If the chair is happy that 3 months is a sufficient interval, then I won't argue. But again, personally, and I do apologise for this, I'll sit and talk forever.
I think it's prudent to say that the management of the arts centres is not down for this committee to run them. Officers are running the arts centres. I'm very, very happy to have all of your views, and we've said that we will engage you through all that process. So I hope everybody is feeling comforted that we will be involved in the process, but I feel that we're getting really down into the detail and operational things that really that is not the role of this committee.
Sorry, Karen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to elaborate on that, I think we've been really open and honest today about some of the challenges that we are acknowledging we've got with Stanford Arts Centre. And I think I've also put forward the proposals of how we are hoping to turn that around and get back to be in a vibrant arts centre. You know, the first visit to the cafe this week, the programme's changing, we're doing work to embed the changes with the team. So I hope members of this committee are suitably reassured that we are aware of those. We've listened to the speakers today, we've met the speakers in advance of the meeting, and we are aware and working collectively to make things better. So I'd just like to put that forward. But obviously, I think, you know, this is going to take a bit of time, and expecting overnight changes by a meeting in the next month. We're not going to have all the answers, but I think by December, if you just bear with us, there'll be a much rosier picture.
Thanks very much indeed, Karen, and thank you all of you for your work that you put into this ahead of the meeting. Thank you. Right, so we'll go back to the agenda then. And I think the next item is the Inspirational Women of South Kesteven. And we've got our chairwoman here, this chair lady, here this afternoon to introduce that item. So Councillor Helen Crawford, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Inspirational Women of South Kesteven. Women have played an extremely important part in history, and it is always important to ensure we shine a light on their contributions and tell their stories. The launch of the Inspirational Women of South Kesteven film will take place on the 21st of November to coincide with the birth of pioneer Edith Smith, the first woman police officer to be given the power of arrest while serving in Grantham. As a society, we have a responsibility to dismantle the stereotypes that hold women back. We need to consider how we talk about topics such as caring responsibilities and who should perform those roles. We need to examine whether we are encouraging young girls to consider all their career and study options, including those in the areas of science, technology, engineering, the arts and mathematics, STEAM. And it's not the STEAM that we're about to hear from John later on the next agenda item. And alongside all of this, we need to ensure this dialogue is inclusive of young boys and men who can also be inhibited by outdated views of what is expected of them. I would say on Inspirational Women, just look at the women's football and how that has inspired young girls who want to play football now. I mean, that's just amazing. That's gone off the wall with inspiring youngsters. District-wide blue plaque guide and information trails. South Kesteven is a district rich in history and heritage. This is evident in the district's buildings, spaces and through the stories of the people who lived and worked in them. Indeed, a key theme of the corporate plan is for the council to help create healthy and strong communities by celebrating and enhancing the rich history of the district. The concept of blue plaques has always been to celebrate and commemorate the link between people and buildings. To celebrate the relationship between people and place, it is proposed that to complement the existing and valued efforts of the civic societies and heritage groups, the introduction of a district-wide blue plaque guide information trails is explored. This way we can ensure the important historical figures who once lived or worked in the district are recognised. The report proposed this committee, supported by officers, scopes out a 12-month programme of events to accompany the launch of the film and investigate sponsorship, networking opportunities and a marketplace to promote local women-owned businesses with the aim of reporting any recommendations to the Cabinet. There is so much history in our district. As Chairman of the Council, I hope members and officers will pull together an excellent programme of events giving residents and visitors the chance to learn about rich heritage, including some of our little known gems. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. I've got nothing more to add. I think it's of two parts. We've obviously got the Inspirational Women of South Kesteven, then we've also got the blue plaques and information trails for consideration as well.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Weaver.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. So the 10 women that are featured in the film are all dead, presumably. I think they're all historical figures. I saw at 2.8 that we're also considering doing something in addition, inspirational women across our district who are currently alive. And that there are currently 13 under consideration. I'm just wondering, first of all, whether the plan is to reduce that to the final 10 to match the 10 from the history, or whether that's a growing list and we can add more to it. And also at 1.6, there's talk about diversity and inclusion and making sure that any workshops or exhibitions are diverse and inclusive. But I would like to also propose that the current inspirational women list that we're looking at, that we make sure that that is diverse and inclusive, because the historical women all look to be women of a certain type, and without making any presumptions, but it would be quite nice to see something more reflective of modern women in the living women, and that we make sure that they come from a wide cross section. Also, just one more thing, I really like the idea at 6.2 of involving schools in identifying local inspirational women, but I'm wondering if we could add to that and reach out and involve local businesses, local community groups, and parish and town councils in order to get as wide and as diverse a list of inspirational women as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fellows.
Phenomenal project. We desperately need to support it. We need to make it as big as we possibly can, and all power to the Arbo. And I almost want to say, as a grandfather of 6 granddaughters, I wouldn't have had the nerve to say anything else.
Is there any? So we're bored. We are. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Obviously, I welcome this. It's great. I'm interested in how the launch will take place, whether or not it's going to be shown in the cinema or at the Stanford Arts Centre as part of something else, or as part of the same thing. We do have a community screen in the Deepings, which it could be shown on, depending on how it is launched. Certainly, at the launch, there is an opportunity to celebrate women in the district, as well as in the Deepings. I was going to say in the Deepings in Bourne and Grantham, everywhere else. And also, if we can make that across the ages, that would be brilliant. If we can get whether it's all the kids, or certainly the head girls of schools and the senior students of colleges and other people. At a previous meeting, I made a plea for Lady Charlotte Guest of Uffington to join the list of people. She was amazing as a linguist, as a industrialist, and as a person who knitted scarves for cabbies in her spare time. Absolutely astonishing woman, and I'm sure there are many others further around the district that would make the list. My main question, though, is why has it taken so long? We commissioned this in, I think, 2019. I've been trying to get information out of it, and it was like getting blood out of a stone, really, finding out where it was and how much it had cost and so on. And why have we sat on it for nearly 3 years?
Can I answer that last? We have had a pandemic in the interim.
Yeah, but to respond to that, it's a video. It's something that we could have done as a virtual display. I mean, we had time during the pandemic to have arguments about the statue outside, which is one of the inspirational women of South Kesteven. We had a long argument about the £100,000 that we were going to plan for a party. So why couldn't we do this during the pandemic?
Nicola.
What I'm hearing is really keen interest in this, and I'm absolutely thrilled to bits. I think let's do it justice. We've got some great women already. We've got even more, and I agree with Paul and Amanda here. If there's more than 13, if there's 300, if there's 3,000, we've got 144,000 people in South Kesteven, so you can bet your bottom dollar we can get some really great case studies going. So I think rather than dwelling on why we didn't do something, I've been employed a year, 3 months in the organisation. The minute I saw the video, I thought this has got to be shared. We are where we are, Ashley, and I think if we can do something justice and actually celebrate the inspirational women of South Kesteven, we've all achieved something.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yes, I was going to say, as Councillor Baxter knows, within the Deepings, we do recognise people, all ages, for all sorts of different reasons. And I think you were probably instrumental in setting that whole thing up, weren't you? So we're very good in Deeping to recognise wonderful people.
Thank you. Yes, we are. We have our Making a Difference Awards in Deeping St James every year. Yeah, we do. So are we happy then to go with those recommendations on page 29? I take it that we are. Yeah. Yeah, okay, lovely. That's super great. Thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you very much, Helen. So moving on now to the STEM data, STEAM, not STEM, number 9, economic impact. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The colleague from IT seems to have just left the room for a moment, and given there's a couple of slides to go up, I hope he comes back very shortly. Oh, just need the 2 slides.
Those of you old enough to remember, that's a little bit like a Brian Ricks farce, because as he went out of that door, Joe came back.
Right, thank you, Madam Chairman. Gives me pleasure to bring this report and presentation to you today. I'm conscious it's 4:10 and the STEAM report is a 59-page report, which is why hopefully the 2 slides I've managed to get it down to should make life easy for everybody. You may recall at the previous meeting of the committee where the subject of STEAM data was discussed, and this was in the context of the council's KPIs and how we measure the economic impact on the district of the visitor economy. It was agreed that once the latest data became available, that I would come back and report this to the committee in a succinct way as possible. And believe me, although these slides are busy, this is the most succinct way as possible to present this information. I'm also pleased to say I have with me our Tourism and Visitor Economy Officer, Jade Newby, who will lead on taking forward a number of the actions identified through the information provided to us through the STEAM data. So to briefly recap, STEAM, or to give it its full title, Scarborough Tourism Economic Activity Monitor, catchy, I know, is an economic impact modelling process which approaches the measurement of tourism through its use of local supply side data and tourism performance and visitor survey data collection. So essentially, it is recognised as the industry standard for measuring tourism impact and is used by many local authorities and destination management organisations across the country. And this is our contribution to this is part of an initiative from all local authorities across Lincolnshire to use STEAM data. As referenced in the report, STEAM uses data from 4 key visitor types, which are staying in serviced accommodation, staying in non-serviced accommodation, staying with friends and relatives, and day visitors. And this in turn provides us with a huge data set of information that allows us to track visitor behaviours, spend, stay patterns, and which of the subsectors have the greatest impact on the overall numbers. Those of you who've had the opportunity to review the full 59-page South Stephen STEAM report included in the pack will acknowledge the huge length and breadth of information that is collected. So the purpose of today is really just to make sense of that, and in 2 slides provide the overall picture of our visitor economy pre, during and post the pandemic and lockdown restrictions. So moving to slide 1, this provides the data that compares 2020 information with 2021, and should come as no surprise that as we moved out of lockdown restrictions, the sector saw a significant increase across all key indicators of visitor days, visitor numbers, economic impact and direct employment, with the 2 largest increases being in day visitors and stays at non-serviced accommodation, which I believe enforces the belief that people remain less inclined to stay overnight in either serviced accommodation or even with friends and relatives. The next slide, you can just get the next one, mate. So the next slide, I believe, is the more telling, as it provides us with the data for the period both pre and post restrictions, in that it compares 2019 data with 2021 data. From this, we can see that across virtually all of the indicators, levels in 2021 in no way return to those of the pre-pandemic era, except the continuing trend of staying in non-serviced accommodation, which, as you will see, continues to grow where other more traditional forms of serviced accommodation continue to struggle. Of particular interest in this slide and concern is the employment numbers for people working across the sector. In 2019, there were circa 2.7 million people employed in the sector, with this reducing to circa 1.4 million in 2020. We did, however, see an increase in 2021 with numbers back up to just over 2.2 million. And this is a real interest to us, and thinking back to previous conversations, both at this committee and other consultations, the continued difficulties of recruiting to the tourism businesses, or the difficulties tourism businesses are having in recruiting, yet set against a backdrop in a lot less jobs within the sector currently. As I said earlier, you're aware this is a very long report that sits behind this information, but through these 2 slides, which will obviously circulate, hopefully I've managed to condense this. And most importantly, we will use this information as we further develop our thinking and bring forward this committee on the 6th of December plans for the new tourism strategic framework that we will most definitely frame around those key headings of visitor days, visitor numbers, economic impact and employment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. It's fascinating, actually. It's really interesting, isn't it? Is there anything anybody would like to ask John? Or are we happy to wait until the 6th of December when he brings forward his report? Need to wait until we see the full report. Or is there anything anyone would like to comment on? Councillor Wheeler.
I'm not missing an opportunity to say something, but you mentioned about the non-service accommodation growth. Presumably that's things like Airbnb, is it? I know this isn't for this committee, but presumably the growth in things like Airbnb is going to directly impact the availability of housing in our district. And I don't know what, but it feels like it's something that we as a district should be doing something about. I certainly have noticed in Stanford the growth in Airbnb rentals across the town. And it seems like anytime a town centre property is up for sale, it gets bought by somebody and turned into an Airbnb. Obviously, that's not this committee's concern, but I do feel like it needs to go somewhere and be flat. Actually, we've got, oh, Andrew's sitting here. You're probably very aware of it, but I just wanted to draw that to your attention.
I think absolutely, Councillor Wheeler. I think to further push the message home in terms of a reduction in people staying with friends and relatives, many people have turned their back bedroom into an office. So actually, it's just another example of where the indirectly or directly the visitor economy is being affected by everything that's going on around us. So much so that, as you say, homes are becoming Airbnb, spare bedrooms are becoming offices. So actually, when we're putting our report together, or putting the strategic framework together, there's a lot more than just considering how do we get people into the district. It's how do we counter the sort of things that you're talking about there. Absolutely.
It's interesting, isn't it, how the pandemic has had, far more ramifications than we ever thought. And then now we've got additional stresses on the economy and so on. And what will happen then? How will that play out going forward? It's really quite interesting. It'd be really nice to live in the boring time, wouldn't it? I think. Much rather that. Anyway, so we all good with that this afternoon. So I think that brings to the end the proceedings, apart from having a quick look at the work programme, which obviously we'll be adding to in terms of the looking at and consulting with the consultants over the over the cultural strategy going forward. We'll also be taking forward the markets to December, I should think. Would that be a good, yeah? Thank you, Andrew. That'd be great. Councillor Wheeler.
If it's possible, Madam Chairman, can I add Stanford leisure facilities onto the work plan and put it on the agenda? Obviously, Councillor Cleaver earlier mentioned about the huge growth in housing and population in Stanford. And at the same time, there's been a reduction in leisure facilities in Stanford. Stanford School has brought in, when the pandemic started, brought in restrictions on who could use their leisure facilities. And then now have warned Stanford Tennis Club that they're going to be serving notice on the tennis club, which is a facility that's been used by a large number of residents in Stanford, and lots of people have got in touch with me about it. And so, bearing in mind that leisure comes under Culture and Visitor Economy Committee, I would really appreciate it being put on the agenda urgently for discussion.
Would that be possible, Karen, for us to bring that forward for December? Is that our, no, councillor Nicola? Sorry, Nicola
It's actually not the
Sorry.
remit of this, it's not the remit of this committee. No, leisure isn't a remit of this committee. You've got arts, heritage, markets and fairs, sports, visitor.
I think we'd like to take some conversations offline and have a conversation with Councillor Wheeler to understand what that
Exactly what it's meant.
yeah, and then we can look collectively as a team about, because obviously we've got to be respectful that we've got other issues that we're working on, and there might be wider conversations within the council that we need to bring more people in. So I'm happy to have that conversation offline, and then we'll come back if that's okay, Chairman.
Yeah, that's okay, councillor Wheeler, if you could.
Yeah, I thought that sports and leisure was part of this committee because we've discussed Deeping Leisure Centre. So I thought it would come under, but I appreciate having that conversation outside.
Yeah, it's my error. It is. But what we could do with understanding a bit more before it's actually just thrown out into a public forum.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. I really think that Deeping Leisure Centre should be on the work plan, even if it's holding updates or progress updates. If it doesn't come here, then where does it come to? I know that lots of work is going on behind the scenes about Deeping Leisure Centre, but there are unresolved problems, and I'd like to ensure that this committee is continuing to scrutinise what's happening.
Karen, can I ask you to?
Yeah, we've recently had some member updates, so we've given a thorough update of those, but I'm happy to bring something to the next meeting if that was your wish, Chairman. I think there is a wider conversation about where this should report into. Obviously, this committee's had an input, and leisure does form part of our remit. But I think the influence was really around the consultation, wasn't it, before, and we had the joint meeting with FEDCO. So I think there might be a conversation between the chairs of those two committees about where it best sits. But I do take Councillor Baxter's point that at the minute there's no formal routing for progress reports.
So we can see that that's a loose end, but we won't let it go, obviously. Okay, anything else from anybody? No? Okay, so we're going to meet again on December the 6th, I think that is, and we'll meet in the chamber here. We've got the work plan, and agenda will be set out ahead of time. So thank you very much indeed for your attendance this afternoon. Thanks for all your work to the office.